After defining clearly roles and responsibilities, next element is standard work. Standard work complements roles and responsibility element because once we have defined who will do what, it is important to define or to document also how to do that, so that we make sure that the defined roles and responsibilities are being fulfilled with best practices in a best possible way. So this document standard work comes into play. What is standard work? Standard work is simply the best practices to perform a process, therefore simply a key driver for efficiency. Standard work is not SOP, it's not standard operating procedure, because in SOP we are taking one task, one activity and defining in much detail how to do all the sub activities. But on the other hand, standard work, it standardizes how we are doing, it documents the best practices. Instead of how to do it, standard work defines what to do, who will do it, in which sequence it has to be done, and in ideal case, why to do that way, the way it is defined. So the simple goal is that in long term, the people do not deviate from the best practices and keep on performing these best practices unless the new standard work come into role and redefines the best practices. What are the benefit of standard work we have so far experienced? Simply imagine in a process we have 10 employees, and for the 6 key processes we have defined and documented standard work. So everywhere for these 6 employees there is simple 1-page document, and there is written what's the standard work at this place. It has been documented. This reduces the learning curve up to 75%, and it's a lot, so that when we want to multi-skill the people, cross-train the people, then the learning curve is so quick that we can train a lot more number of people in different roles and responsibilities. Addition to that, because we have visualized the best practices, people don't do their own style of doing anything they want, but they stick to the best practices. It has been documented that it brings at least 10 to 15% of productivity boost. Addition to that, because we are working in a standard way, the results, the quality for the customer department or the end customer, it's consistent. The quality is consistent and the time spent is also consistent. So it gives a standard lead time, which makes everything predictable to plan ahead that how much time which project will take, because now everywhere in the project or everywhere in that office we have defined criteria, we have defined quality, we have defined way of working, and that's why we have minimum and maximum time which we are consuming in that area for that activities, which makes the results very predictable and consistent, which drives further the productivity in office areas. How to create standard work? The very first step is to identify all the key activities which are being performed in that area, and next step is to prioritize them. We cannot create standard work for each and every activity, so it is required to prioritize and start with the most important, and then depending upon the resources and importance you can stop after covering some of the key activities for creating standard work. And after that, once we have identified the top few activities for standard work, identify the team for every activity who will write the standard work or the best way of performing them. Because if only one person is writing how they are working, they will never be able to write the best practices. Then the standard work will be written just from a very narrow and from only one perspective. So that's why it's important to define a team. In team, then identify what are the different ways of working that one particular activity, and after finding out the different way, next step is to identify and achieve consensus on on best practice. This is key because everybody might think the way they are thinking, they are doing is the best way, but we have to achieve the consensus and proof that this is the best practice at the moment to perform that activity. Once we have defined this is the way to work, the next step is to document best practice on one page in a visual way, which is very easy to understand. We'll see the example in a few minutes. And once that document is ready, next step is to train the people with this standard work, because it might happen that everybody has to adjust 10 to 20 or maybe 30% of the way they are working, because now the right way of working or the best practices has been defined in a team after the consensus we have defined and visually presented on one page. Now the people might have to adjust it, and for that we need to train them in the new way of working, what we have defined as standard work. And after that we have to monitor the effectiveness, if the intended results are being achieved by standard work, and are there additional issues there which have arise after introduction of standard work. And also we have to take care if the people are following the standard work, if compliance is there, and then keep on improving the standard work based upon these criteria. If we have any issue, just fix the issue. Maybe something is not clearly defined. With these all steps, we can write very well structured, clearly defined standard work for that area, which will bring flow in that area and brings us the productivity. Now let's see a very simple example for standard work for the activity or for the process order confirmation or customer order confirmation. The first step here in standard work, we have written all the activities which are being performed. These activities, for example, are collect all the job orders, all the customer orders from different channels, different branches, and after that check for the available production capacity. And once we have checked, after that check the available material, if we have the availability of all the required material. And once we have checked the production capacity and the material availability, then we have to send the confirmation to the customer, yes, we can deliver the product in that time. So then it's the customer confirmation is sent. The last activity is to create the reports from dashboards. So these are the main 5 activities which we have covered in this standard work. And after that we can add the columns. The column could be how often we have to perform these tasks, and how long ideally it should take, and when we have to perform them. So this is a very simple example how for order confirmation area or process we can define very simple one-page standard work.